Hey guys, so today we're covering a case that honestly just makes me sick to my stomach. And I need to warn you right from the start, this one is brutal, like genuinely. One of the most horrific crime scenes investigators have ever seen. We're talking about two 18-year-old girls who were murdered in Nashville, Tennessee in 1996. And here's the thing that absolutely breaks my heart. One of them wasn't even supposed to be working that day. She was covering someone else's shift. And you guys, this case has literally everything that makes a true crime case frustrating and heartbreaking all at once. We've got dodgy DNA evidence, a suspect who gets charged 17 years later only to walk free, and a question that still haunts everyone involved. Who was the actual target, and who just happened to be in the worst place at the absolute worst time? But before we get into this, if you're new here, welcome. So I'm glad you found this channel. This is where we talk about cases that deserve to be remembered, cases that need answers. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much for being here. It really matters to the world. All right, let's get into this. Now, the victims, Melissa and Tiffany. All right, so first I need to tell you about Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell, because they were real people with real families who loved them, and what happened to them is absolutely devastating. Melissa was 18 years old. She was a freshman at Middle Tennessee State University studying psychology. She had been a cheerleader in high school, and she was outgoing. She was well-liked, and her mom, Gail, was so incredibly proud of her. Like, Melissa seemed to have everything going for her, you know? But like a lot of university students, she needed money, and the job she got to make that money, well, she kept it a secret from her family. A friend from high school had recruited her to work as a dancer at a place called Exotic Tan for Men in downtown Nashville. And no, before you even ask, it wasn't actually a tanning salon. It was an adult-oriented business where clients could book private sessions with dancers. Her family had absolutely no idea she was working there. Now, here's where this gets absolutely eerie, you guys. Just before Melissa was murdered, her mom, Gail, had this horrific nightmare that her daughter had been killed. Like, the feeling was so strong and so real that she literally got in her car and drove to Melissa's dorm to check on her. Can you even imagine that? Melissa calmed her down and told her everything was fine and not to worry. A few days later, she was dead. I can't even fathom what that must feel like for a mother. Tiffany Campbell was also 18. She was known for her gorgeous smile, and she was incredibly close with her grandmother, Ernestine. And, like, they talked all the time. They were best friends. The last time they spoke was the night before Tiffany was killed, and they ended the call the same way they always did, with, "I love you." And that was their last conversation ever. Now, Tiffany's grandmother had only found out about her job at the adult establishment a few days before her death. She called the number, and Tiffany herself had answered, and she was worried, you guys. But Tiffany had already told her she was planning to quit soon. And here's the part that absolutely guts me. Tiffany wasn't even on the roster to work the day she was murdered. She had been called in on the last minute to cover someone else's shift. Now think about that for a second. If that other employee hadn't called in sick that day, Tiffany would still be alive. Her whole life would have been different. It's devastating. Now, the crime scene. I'm warning you, this is brutal. All right, so it's February 22nd, 1996. It's a Thursday, just a normal day in Nashville. Tiffany and Melissa are both on a shift at Toxic Tan for Men on Church Street. The last time anyone confirmed seeing them alive was around 11 in the morning. Now, after that, the phone just starts ringing and ringing, but nobody's picking up. The owner gets worried and drives over to the building to check on things. And when he gets there, the front door is locked. There's no signs of forced entry, no broken glass, nothing that looks suspicious from the outside, which immediately tells you something, right? Whoever did this had a key, or they were let in by the girls, or they knew how to lock up properly on their way out. This wasn't some random smash and grab. So he lets himself in with his keys, and he starts looking around the building. Everything seems normal at first, and then he makes his way to the back, to a small laundry and break room. And what he found there, you guys, I can't even describe how awful this was. Tiffany Campbell and Melissa Chilton were both dead, and the level of violence was just, well, it was extreme. And between the two of them, they'd been stabbed nearly 100 times. 100! This is what investigators call overkill, which is when someone uses way more force than is necessary to actually kill someone. And that kind of overkill, it points to rage, like it's personal, intense, white-hot rage. The assistant district attorney at the time, Pam Anderson, said it perfectly. They were brutally murdered. They were defenseless, and there was absolutely and obviously a lot of hatred and passion behind the killing. One of the detectives, Mickey Miller, said the crime scene was so horrific that the images would stay with him for the rest of his career. And this is a detective who had seen plenty of terrible things, you guys. Now, both girls had their wallets taken from the scene, but police didn't think this was actually about robbery. Employees weren't allowed to carry cash on them, so there wouldn't have been much to steal anyway. Investigators think the killer took the wallets for the IDs inside, maybe to slow down the identification of the bodies, or maybe to terrorize the girls in their final moments by showing them he knew who they were. We'll never really know. The security tapes, gone, completely ripped out and taken, which tells you that this person, as frenzied and rage-filled as they were in that moment, was also thinking strategically. They didn't want to be caught on camera. They were too smart. They were smart enough to cover their tracks. The one thing they did leave behind was a military-style knife sheath, potentially from the murder weapon itself, which was never, ever found. But remember, this was 1996 and DNA technology wasn't near what it is now. So that sheath just sat in an evidence locker for years, waiting for science to catch up. The theory: one target, one witness. Okay, so here's where this gets even more heartbreaking, you guys. Based on the wounds on both victims, investigators developed a theory about what actually happened in that room. Tiffany had been stabbed over 70 times, 70 separate stab wounds. The sheer number of wounds on her body suggested that she was the main focus of the attacker's rage. She was the target. Melissa, on the other hand, she had defensive wounds all over her hands and arms, like her hands were just covered in them. At Melissa's viewing, Tiffany's grandmother looked at Melissa's hands and said they looked so pitiful, like she was trying to protect herself. I just can't even imagine seeing that. So the working theory became this: the killer came for Tiffany. That was always the plan. That's who they wanted. But Melissa, who wasn't even supposed to be there that day, who was just covering a shift, walked in on the attack or was already in the room, and she became a witness. And witnesses can't be left alive. So she fought desperately to defend herself, to get away, to survive. But against that level of violence and that level of rage, she never stood a chance. 2 girls dead, but only one was the intended target. The question that haunted investigators from day one was why? Who hated Tiffany Campbell enough to do this? From the very beginning, one name kept coming up over and over again: Patrick Streeter. He was Tiffany's ex-boyfriend, and he had been a star athlete from the same high school. The relationship had ended, and that immediately put him on the police's radar. He was interviewed multiple times in those first few days after the murder, and he was absolutely a person of interest. But there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. He had an alibi, and without a confession or any forensic evidence linking him directly to the scene, he was just one theory among many. But here's the thing. There was also a witness who said Streeter had shown up at the salon the night before the murders looking for Tiffany, and he was upset, visibly upset, angry even. He had apparently stormed out in rage, but at the time, that was just one piece of a very complicated, very messy puzzle. Melissa's mom, Gail, actually went to the police station the Monday after her daughter's funeral, fully expecting to see the killer already in custody. Like, she genuinely thought an arrest would happen quickly, but they told her to go home and wait. She had no idea, none, that it would be 17 years before anything actually happened. And so the case just went cold. Properly, completely cold. The tanning bed murders, as the media started calling them, became just another unsolved case file sitting in a box gathering dust. The breakthrough, sort of. For 17 years, you guys, the families just waited. Tiffany's mom, Melissa's mom, Tiffany's grandmother, they all just waited while the world moved on around them. Can you even imagine? 17 years of not knowing, of wondering, of hoping someone would be held accountable. Then in 2013, everything changed. DNA technology had advanced enough that they could retest old evidence with new methods. And they ran that knife sheet again. This time, they got a partial DNA profile. And that partial profile, well, it pointed to Patrick Streeter. This was massive, you guys. Streeter, who had been on the periphery of the investigation from day one, suddenly became the prime suspect. And here's the thing, by 2013, he was already in prison in California for a series of armed robberies, some of which he had committed on February the 21st, 2013, one day before the 17th anniversary of the murders. A Nashville grand jury indicted Patrick Streeter on 2 counts of first-degree murder. For the families, this felt like vindication, finally. After 17 years of silence, of waiting, of grief, they finally had a name. They finally had someone to hold accountable. Quick pause here. If you're finding this case as frustrating as I am, please hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people, and it means cases like this get the attention they deserve. Also, I really want to hear from you guys in the comments. Do you think they had the right suspect, or do you think the real killer is still out there somewhere? Drop your theories below because I'm genuinely curious about what all of you think. All right, back to the case. The case completely falls apart. So Streeter was extradited from California to Tennessee in 2015 to face trial. The prosecution seemed really confident, you guys. They had the partial DNA from the sheath. They had testimony from Streeter's ex-wife saying he had owned a military-style knife, the exact type consistent with the sheath and the wounds on both victims. And when investigators asked Streeter about it, he denied over and over again even owning a knife like that. They also had the witness who saw him at the salon looking for Tiffany the day before, visibly angry and upset. The theory seems straightforward. Jealous ex-boyfriend goes to confront his ex-girlfriend, things turn violent, and Melissa becomes collateral damage because she's a witness who can identify him. Streeter maintained his innocence the entire time. He told investigators they were trying to make things fit where they didn't fit. He admitted to going to the salon, but he denied being angry and denied owning that type of knife. As the trial day got closer and closer, the defense team absolutely hammered away at the DNA evidence. A partial match isn't the same thing as a full match, they argued. It's definitive. They pushed and pushed for more advanced testing with newer technology. In 2017, they finally did new DNA analysis on scrapings taken from under Melissa's fingernails and from the knife sheath itself. Everyone expected this to seal the deal, to confirm everything, to make the case rock solid. Instead, it absolutely destroyed the prosecution's case. In June 2018, just as the trial was finally about to start, after all these years, the Nashville District Attorney's Office dropped all charges against Patrick Streeter. The new DNA testing showed that the sample was a complex mixture from multiple people, and it made it impossible to definitively say that Streeter's DNA was even there at all. Without solid evidence, definitive DNA evidence, the prosecution feared that a jury wouldn't even convict beyond a reasonable doubt. And here's the thing. If they went to trial and was acquitted, double jeopardy would mean he could never be tried for this again, ever. So they made the decision to let him go. Patrick Streeter walked out of the Nashville jail after more than 2 years in custody, free. For the families, you guys, this was absolutely devastating. Gail Chilton said she believed a jury would have convicted him and called the decision to drop the charges the biggest mistake they could have ever made. And in a genuinely tragic twist that I can barely even talk about, Tiffany's mom died of a heart attack the very night of the hearing where the charges were dropped. The very same night. Like she waited all those years for justice, thought she was finally going to get it, and then it was just ripped away and her heart just gave out. So where do things stand now? Still no justice. So here we are, you guys. Nearly 30 years later, and this case is still completely unsolved. The building where Exotic Tan and Men used to operate has been demolished. It's gone. The physical scar on Nashville is gone. But for these families, the wound is still wide open. It's still bleeding. Gail Chilton has never, ever stopped fighting. She's continuously pushed police to keep reevaluating the evidence as technology improves and gets better. She says that we can solve it today. Somebody can see this right now and let them know that they can take a big burden off of my chest and plus take a killer off the street. Tiffany's grandmother, Ernestine, is approaching 90 years old now. She still lives with that last "I love you" replaying in her head. Both Tiffany and her mother are gone now. The pain just doesn't end for this family. And Patrick Streeter, well, his story didn't end in 2018 when he walked out of that jail. In January of 2024, he was arrested in Seattle, Washington for attempted rape and unlawful imprisonment. A woman escaped from his car half naked, screaming that he was trying to rape her. She said he had threatened to break her face while physically restraining her before she managed to fight him off with pepper spray and run for help. He eventually pled guilty to reduced charges of second-degree assault and unlawful imprisonment with sexual motivation. He got nearly 10 years in prison and has to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life. For Gail, this brought a really bitter sort of validation. "I'm really thankful someone took him off the street," she said. "I wish I had gotten him 7 years ago. I feel guilty, like I should have pushed him harder at the time." The Nashville District Attorney's Office looked into whether the Seattle case could help their old case in any way, but they found nothing substantial that could be used. And because of double jeopardy, they can't try Streeter again for the 1996 murders unless completely new evidence emerges that wasn't available before. So the man they once thought was the killer is now behind bars for a violent crime against a woman, which obviously deepens suspicion and makes you even wonder more. But it proves absolutely nothing about what happened in that laundry room in 1996. You guys, this case is genuinely haunting. Two 18-year-old girls, both with their entire lives ahead of them, murdered in the most brutal way imaginable. The what-ifs in this case just don't stop. What if Tiffany hadn't agreed to cover that shift? What if Melissa hadn't been there at that exact moment? What if DNA science in 1996 had been what it is today? And the biggest, most frustrating question of all is, if Patrick Streeter wasn't the person in that laundry room with a knife, then who the hell was? Was it a jealous ex-boyfriend who just got incredibly lucky with dodgy DNA testing? Or was it someone else entirely, maybe an anonymous client from the establishment who committed this act of absolute brutality and just walked away into the night, never to be identified? For nearly 30 years now, these questions have gone unanswered. Melissa Chilton and Tiffany Campbell deserve justice. Their families deserve answers, and somewhere out there, someone knows something. Someone has information that could crack this case wide open. If you have any information about this case, no matter how small or insignificant you think it might be, please contact the Metro Nashville Police Department's Cold Case Unit, and you can remain anonymous. Maybe you heard something back in 1996, a rumor, an offhand comment from someone you knew. It could be the one missing piece that finally brings justice for these girls. What do you think happened here? Do you think the initial suspect was the right one and the DNA just didn't cooperate? Or do you think the real killer was never even on their radar? I genuinely want to know what you think. So let me know down in the comments. And if you want to see more unsolved cases like this one that answers questions, make sure you are subscribed and hit that notification bell and don't miss anything. Thanks so much for watching. This is The Dark Room. I'll see you on the next one.